There are thousands of places like the old Ballyduff quarry in Northern Ireland. For passers-by, nondescript. For those who live here, anything but.
They took him up the quarry in Ballyduff. They killed him with a breeze block because the gun jammed.
Or the Shankill Road, West Belfast.
When I got to the corner of the street, because I knew that's where Sharon worked, the shop was just gone.
And Springfield Road, Ballymurphy.
My mummy was actually shot 1 or more times to the face on Springfield Road.
In May, a fresh inquest found that 10 people killed by British soldiers in Ballymurphy, West Belfast, were innocent. Cue jubilation back then. Today, dismay. The government have just announced proposals for a statute of limitations, what some are describing as an amnesty for people who committed crimes during the Troubles before the Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. If the proposals become law in the autumn, they'll apply to former members of the security services. But because of international law, they'll also apply to ex-members of the paramilitaries.
We know that the prospect of the end of criminal prosecutions will be difficult for some to accept, and this is not a position that we take lightly. But we've come to the view that this is the best and only way to facilitate an effective information retrieval and provision process, and the best way to help Northern Ireland move further along the road to reconciliation.
Although few are surprised, Northern Ireland's 5 main political parties and the Labour Party will see this as Boris Johnson's administration reneging on agreements like the Stormont House deal, for example, where commitments were made about historic investigations.
I want to take the path to reconciliation, but I cannot believe that the path to reconciliation is made easier when we sacrifice justice.
Many former soldiers also aren't happy because for them talk of an amnesty implies wrongdoing.
A statute of limitations actually says, well, you may have done wrong but will not bother investigating it. It doesn't exonerate soldiers from the stigma that has been levelled at them, that has been inflicted on them, that they were criminals, they were murderers.
There's nobody supporting you. They'll clear off. Nobody wants you.
Then there's the civilian victims and their families. We first met Gareth McCord a few months ago. He was confronting a group representing loyalist paramilitaries, the LCC, at an anti-protocol demonstration in Belfast.
Come away from them, please.
His brother, from a loyalist family himself, was murdered by the loyalist UVF because he had information on them. They brought him to the quarry in Ballyduff.
They abducted him. They took him up the quarry in Ballyduff. And they tried to shoot him, and the gun jammed. And then they beat him to death.
Today we met him again, along with other victims' families. For Gareth, the announcement of a statute of limitations is not just about the past. It's about the paramilitaries still operating in his neighbourhood.
In my community, Unionist community, the loyalist paramilitaries are still drug dealing. They're still extorting money. They're still involved in racketeering. Victims seem to be the problem in society. Now, because we are wanting justice, we seem to people saying to move forward, to move on with life. But what we're seeing is the paramilitaries being given legitimacy.
And as far as you're concerned, Gareth, does today's decision make it more likely that those paramilitaries will continue to do what they will do?
100%.
In other words, for him, the people involved in his brother's murder, if less likely to be prosecuted for that, will become more confident criminals now. Legacy issues in Northern Ireland are incredibly fraught. Today's announcement has been driven by a government who wants to try to draw a line under what it sees as vexatious claims against former soldiers, claims unlikely to be prosecuted. Alongside the statute of limitations proposal, the government want to establish a truth and information retrieval process to encourage people to come forward with new information. Bridge Vole's mother was killed by British soldiers at Ballymurphy. Alan McBride's wife died in the IRA's Shankill Road bombing. Although it's not clear yet whether people will be compelled to give information or not, Bridge and Alan are sceptical.
I think Boris is probably doing it more for votes, for the English votes, when the new elections come along, because basically People in England don't have no time for us, no interest, and all their interest is their soldiers.
I know it's done on this notion that people will now be able to come forward and tell the truth because there's no longer the threat of prosecution. But that is there's no way of knowing that will be the case. And to be quite honest with you, the idea that there's going to be lots of people out there, former British soldiers, paramilitaries, etc., that all of a sudden are going to, you know, engage in this big, massive love-in where they're going to come and confess all and give the families the truth that they've been seeking, I think is fanciful.
We were speaking in the Wave Trauma Centre's garden, Belfast, a place to remember for victims and survivors. Memories everywhere of those gone, and reflections on what they would have thought about today's announcement.